it's Kate Cadillo again, your photopreneur coach, and welcome to my 2014 Photography and Business Tips blog. Today we are talking about the next element of the 12 elements of a mirror image, and that is composition. So this is what PPA has to say about composition. Composition is important to the design of an image, bringing all of the visual elements together in concert to express the purpose of the image. Proper composition holds the viewer in the image and prompts the viewer to look where the creator intends. Effective composition can be pleasing or disturbing depending on the intent of the image maker. So a couple of things about composition. There are actually a lot of things that we could talk about with regard to composition, but I'm going to just go over a couple of things that might be of benefit to you if you're entering prints into competition. One of those you've probably all seen, and of course these are just hand-drawn lines, so forget that they're not straight. But I'm sure you've all seen the rule of thirds. If you haven't, just a brief description of this is that when we look at an image, it is much more pleasing to have the main subject be in one of these intersecting areas here than it is to be where you can see I am right now in this frame of this video, which is dead center. Dead center is not interesting. It's not pleasing to the eye, and it's not good composition. So this rule of thirds will help you to remember where are some good places that or other places you can place the subject to give your image more impact. So if you sort of split your image into thirds, both vertically and horizontally, one of these 4 spots is a great place to place the subject. You'll see that we do have one picture in the room, and this is a good example of the rule of thirds. We've done a couple things with this on a composition basis. One is that the subject is placed in the top left quadrant of the rule of thirds, but also we have cropped this image in. We have made it not typical, like what you would see if somebody were taking a snapshot. Someone taking a snapshot would never chop off the top of somebody's head, for instance. But we don't care about the top of her hair up here. We want the subject to draw us in. And if we have her eyes in the area where the rule of thirds would place them, then it has more appeal and more interest. The other thing that we have done is that this image is cropped, or the aspect ratio of this image is a little bit unusual. It's not your typical 8:10 cropping. It's a longer structure, and when you're thinking of entering images into print competition, one thing you can do to add interest is to think about how can I affect the composition, how could I crop this image differently to make the composition better. And one of the things you can do, which is even after the fact, even after you've taken the image in the camera, when you get back into the studio and you bring your image into Lightroom or you bring it into Photoshop, it's great to take and play with the placement of the image. Try putting the subject here, try putting them here and here and here. See which way you like best. Have the subject leading into the image from this side, or having them leading out of the image on this side, and see what effect that has on the story you're trying to tell. One other thing I want to show you that can be an interesting way to check for where someone's eye is going to be drawn. We talked about this a little bit before in an earlier video, and that is that light colors, bright colors, and primary colors like red, blue, and green and yellow will draw your attention to them more easily than darker areas. And so one way to see where your viewer is going to automatically look is to take your photograph and flip it upside down and see where your eye goes immediately. And for me, there's this big white spot because she's got a white dress on against a dark background, which is a mixing of keys, which is typically a no-no. I liked it, but it is typically a no-no to put a white dress on a dark background. But the other thing you'll notice is the brightness in the shoes, which we talked about before. It's a bright area that draws your attention, and it draws your attention away from the subject, which would be the subject's eyes. This image is also cropped, centered, sort of using the rule of thirds rule. So that's just some things that you can think about with composition. And again, really look at your images and ask yourself before you finalize them, is this the best way to compose this image? Is this the best way to frame it? Is this the best placement of the subject? And that can help you make your images more interesting before you put them into competition. So I thank you for joining me. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. We're going to do another step in our workflow. And then, of course, we're going back to the other elements of a print. So you guys have a great evening, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.